Yep, we're Oxide Games. We're located up in Maryland, just north of Baltimore, and we make strategy games. We can just do a couple of quick plugs because I will forget by the end, so I need to front load them because it's Saturday. So we make strategy games, as I said. We are currently working on Ara, History Untold. Thank you, Di. And normally, if you ever see me at previous sieges, you will be familiar with the phrase, "Buy my game." I can't say that because it ain't out yet. Wishlist my game, and we will all very much appreciate it. It'd be good stuff. Also, we are hiring. We are hiring literally all disciplines. Design, art, production, operations, QA. What am I forgetting? Engineering. Literally everything is open positions. So if you like what you hear, if you like us, please apply. We love you guys. We totally love hiring from GDA. It's good stuff.
Join us.
Yeah. So without further ado, let's do some quick introductions here first. So my name is Menard. I'm the design director at Oxide Games and lead designer on Ara, History Untold, Wishlist my game. And I will be moderating this lovely panel of folks here.
I'm Zai. I'm a QA analyst at Oxide Games. I am both a player and developer, I guess. Been in the industry for a while. Glad to be here.
I'm Statsbury. I'm a producer on Ara, History Untold. And I'm also a player and a developer, I guess.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm an associate designer here at Oxide. It's my first time in the industry, so I'm super excited to be here. And I wasn't super into strategy games until I got here, started working on them, and then I started playing them, and now I'm addicted.
Hi, I'm Paul Murphy. I'm the lead narrative designer on Ara, History Untold, which you should wishlist. And that's about all.
That's it?
Yeah,
That's it.
Yeah, we're people.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Buy the game when it's out.
When it's out. It's cool. So let's just start kind of like at a very basic definition for what we're talking about. In your own words, what's diversity? What does that even mean?
I think it means people with different backgrounds, different lifestyles, different beliefs, different genders, and different points of view on all sorts of things.
Yeah, I agree. One of the most important things too for me is diversity is not only about race, like there's in every form, it's also about different backgrounds and different professions and different just point of view, like you said, and just different experiences that can be shared and learned from.
Mm-hmm. I think the calls for diversity exist specifically in a recognition of the reality that we live in. We live in a society and a culture that is not diverse, at least not in its preferred trends. So when there's a call for diversity, I think that call is specifically a recognition that we live in a culture and society that prefers and is more conducive to white, male, heterosexual, Christian experiences. I'm sorry. But that isn't to say that diversity doesn't also include those people, because to not include those people would be the opposite of diversity. So it's just a recognition of the forest needs to be seen, not just a tree.
Yeah, and I think with the forest, not just the tree, it's also about mindset as well. You can say diversity, but what does that mean unless you and the people like at your studio or around you in your life are actually like thinking in those terms and thinking and just consciously being mindful of the perspectives that you don't have and that you're missing.
Yeah, and sometimes those perspectives aren't visual either. Like it's very easy to call out gender, race, things that are, I can see this and I can see that we are homogenous, but there's also things you can't see, like hidden disabilities, neurodiversity, and a lot of things people won't necessarily, just give you that information, but just be mindful that those people could be around you and they have needs and opinions and perspectives too, and they should be included, just not things that you can visually pinpoint.
You also might want to add in age diversity.
That's fair.
In this business particularly, it gets a lot harder to get a job once you're older, which is why I'm holding on to this one over.
It does, which is weird because so many of us grew up playing video games, and like, at least for me, in the 80s and the 90s, and now I'm just like, crap, I'm almost 40 now, but I'm still a gamer, so...
Yeah, oh, it's true. So how are ways then to really fail at being diversity minded, or like, So we all know what it is that we want to do, but what are kind of like common ways that people then accidentally fall into not being diverse?
I think one of the most regular failures that we see in game design, in storytelling in movies, is having the default character always be of a certain kind. We all know what the default character is. We all know default Danny.
I've not heard that term before.
It limits things. It limits things so much. It limits storytelling. It limits the perspective of where the story can go. And it's not to say that it's not a valid perspective at some points, because it totally is. It just shouldn't be the only one.
Yeah, and you make me think that a lot of it is about diversity just because, like, for accuracy's sake. Personally, like, I actually kind of get pretty offended with, like, games don't typically do this, but, like, there are a lot of movies that are like, this is a gay movie, this features a gay person or a gay couple, and you can tell that it's really just to, like, hit some sort of metric. You can tell that, like, there's a lot of lack of empathy. I think that's sort of approaching the issue from the perspective of, oh, we need diversity, we need to, like, make this a big deal, where it's like, you know, none of us, like, made a big deal about our existences. We just are our existences. And that's sort of what I think your, you know, starting point in, like, making characters or making stories that are diverse should be.
Right, because when, like, when somebody's making a story that's like, oh, like, this is a gay story, or somebody's making a black story, it's like, oh, this is a black story, then it kind of becomes obvious that the person who was originating this story was not of that group.
Serving an agenda, and it's like, it's showing that people are nuanced and have multiple angles and aspects to them, and not just be I'm the guy who does the thing. Where, like, we see a lot where people from different cultures are shown. There's very much if there's an Indian person, there's going to be a Bollywood song and a temple coming up, and it almost always happens. We're not always singing Bollywood songs in a temple. Like, we're normal people.
A Bollywood song.
But it's to show that people of different cultures, backgrounds are just normal people who also have multiple things happening in their life. They're not just here to be the token character, and just making sure while you're developing, you build that into the narrative, and also while working, you make sure those cultures are represented well. Maybe bring in a person who's a specialist in those, like, areas, and not just be a not diverse writer room.
Right. One of the issues, I think, with this particular business is that a lot of game styles focus on a single character as the protagonist, and the entire game is built around that single character, including the plot line, the story, all of the art, those kind of things. And companies tend to want to get the most, like, popular, generic character hero, and a lot of times that leads to the burly white guy with ninja skills or something.
Yep.
And you know, I think other game types and styles are better able to handle diversity. And I get, not even while I'm saying it, I think of things like Tomb Raider, which, you know, is sort of the same kind of story, but it's not a burly white guy at all. It's a burly white chick. So we didn't get that far, but it was somewhat of a movement in the direction of going away from, you know, the standard.
Yeah, it's don't play to the stereotypes. If you're not, I'm the strong white guy or the strong independent woman or the super cultural person. It's like we are just normal people, and we might have different traits than normal, but
we have more in common than we do that separates us.
And it's the fear that you won't be able to relate to the character if you're from a different background, and if you are not the generic target audience person, but
which is demonstrably false, because the vast majority of the people in the world aren't those characters who are typically used as the default Dannies. And yet people like me and Satch, and we still engage in those stories. We still love those stories. I'll still walk around some days and be like, call me Snake. No, call me Pliskin. Just because I'm making jokes because I think they're great. But, like, you know, that guy was white. I still relate to him.
Everyone relates to Snake. Let's go.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Real quick, I do want to mention some of the fails of diversity is sort of not knowing like what you're saying or like what a choice in your portrayal might be saying about somebody. Like one example in particular was reading this transgender scientist, and she was really upset and like calling out the fact that journalists always wanted to see her putting on her makeup for like their photo shoots or like their, and she was just like, why? Like, it's because, and there's sort of this unconscious like, ooh, trans woman, okay, you're gonna get all pretty now because they're gonna put makeup on you, and it's just like, no, like, she's a scientist, like, make it about the article. And then that's probably also a little bit of sexism too, to be honest.
I mean, it's like all the news reporters who, they ask the men about their achievements and what they think about a thing, and the lady, well, where'd you get that dress? You look lovely today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who am I wearing?
Who am I? I named it Bob.
Yeah, my skin. It's me.
Yeah, Walmart's and Amazon's now.
TJ Maxx discount.
I think another failure that if we're going to get back to those would be the deployment of tropes when the stories are attempting to be diverse. And both Emily and Satch were talking about this, but there's specific tropes that you can see being used that just kind of like make your brain gloss over a part of the storytelling or just make you disappointed in the way that the storytelling is going because you've heard this a million times before. Yeah. So one example, when there's two gay characters in a story and one of them falls in love with the other, it's like, oh, one of them's going to die. One of them's going to die. Marrying gays happens in so many stories and it doesn't make any sense. It's just like, why? Are you all just scared of showing the continued relationship of these people? Interaction?
The tragic factor. Like, it's like, oh, well, the gay character died. The diverse character died. That's awful. Let's all feel sad, fellow white people.
Yeah, and we all see this as well as things like horror movies. It's like, who's the first person to die in a horror movie?
Yep.
Or teenagers having sex, depending upon the story in question.
Yeah.
The tropes, I mean, they're easy and they're lazy, which is why they're used. And I think most games are better if you can get past them and do some really cool new styles of, new kinds of stories. Create your own tropes. Mm-hmm. Let other people steal from you later.
Oh, yeah.
So something you had mentioned in passing was bringing in representatives of other groups to kind of give a second opinion and their more lived experiences. Do you guys want to talk a little about that? How would you even approach doing, like, say it's like, us all white people, like, we want to make a game that represents a different minority. How would we approach doing that better? Like, how could we get in contact with groups in an effective way?
It helps if you hire them.
Helps if you hire them.
Yeah, for sure.
There's also like cultural centers. I know a lot of games, like Ghost of Tsushima, for example, like Sucker Punches. Not a Japanese studio, but they made a game about a very Japanese thing. You play as a samurai, and you go through the whole plot, which is very like about the island of Tsushima, and it's very well done to the point where the island of Tsushima said, "You are great. Here's an award," and just making sure you understand the culture and what ticks them off, what gets them going, like what are the hot points, something that I might not know about that might be really insensitive for someone, and just making sure they are consulted. And again, hiring is probably the best way to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Like, there is a lot to be said for taking the time to consult with groups and with different people, especially when you're using the locations and the culture of said people. But I think it goes into the best direction when it's just like, okay, bring those people in to become decision makers. I was reading an article in Washington Post not too long ago, a few days ago, and it was talking about a black man who is part of a diversity initiative for some Fortune 500 company. And, they listen to his opinions and they listen to his ideas, but he's not one of the decision makers. He's not somebody that's on a board, or he's not somebody that's in a position of authority. So, I mean, he can shout into the void all he wants. At the end of the day, if what he's saying is judged to be not cost effective or whatever, not, business positive, then it won't be listened to. But that dynamic changes when the people who are needed to consult are actually brought in to start working on the project itself.
Yeah, and I also wanted to add to the hire the guy, and it's not that with that one person, whoever they are, aren't the representative for a whole culture. Everyone is different. I am not like any other Indian. We have a lot of other people who are from India who work here. We're all very different cultural backgrounds, different foods we eat, different languages we speak, and it's really like doing like more like study groups and where you get your product reviewed and get feedback from like different a spectrum of people and making sure that things are not going to be super offensive to everyone, and making sure we cover your bases essentially.
Well, I know that our publisher works with or has its own group of people who are specially trained to look over a product and find out whether it is culturally offensive or wrong, just not factual. And that has been extremely helpful. And also, it's been helpful to have people from other cultures. I've written like tens of thousands of words for our game. And sometimes, I make a mistake. And it's really good to have people from other cultures read them and point out when I said something that is possibly offensive. Or probably, or certainly offensive. And that has helped me a lot to sidestep some of the more common mistakes.
Yeah, you're starting to see a lot of the larger companies are actively employing some of these groups. Disney does the same thing. They have the same kind of thing that Microsoft has as well. But for the smaller companies, sure, like you don't necessarily have the money to employ those. So all those other kind of things about user groups, usability studies, bringing in people, hiring those people are certainly more feasible for if you're a smaller little indie group.
Sure.
Yeah, and you might live somewhere where maybe there is a local group that you could find. In work that I've done, even games that were covering transgender issues, I wasn't just making things up. I was asking like other people with that background, what do you think of this? Because I was in college at the time, so I had access to like a fairly large support group. I could see maybe something similar if you live in like a big city, you have a lot of different cultural groups or clubs or whatever. You might be able to reach out to local people if you don't have the money to hire, people to just do it for a living.
So kind of related to what Paul was going with about making mistakes. So in those attempt to not overtly try to make those mistakes, sometimes I think people overshoot and then kind of go into faux diversity mode, where they you know what I'm talking about. So do you have any advice or stories you'd like to share about people in the best possible intentions doing it so wrong?
I don't want to see any more Twitter posts from Citibank or otherwise with a black square or a rainbow colored tile. Please stop. I'm looking directly at the camera in case you are listening. Please stop. We all know it's fake. Mm-hmm. We all know it's there just to gin up like this demographic support that you think maybe you might get. It's phony. Nobody likes it. I mean, and honestly, it's like I just like turn it off in my brain. It's like I see and then I'm just like, I don't want to engage in that anger today. So it's it's a net loss. It's like it's just performative for yourselves. That faux diversity is really annoying, but it's more annoying than harmful, I guess.
I mean, yeah, speaking of like Twitter trends, there's a lot of anger you see often where someone wore a dress not from their culture and now they're being canceled, and it's like, stop doing that. Like, it's if someone is enjoying and cherishing another culture and not making fun of it or making it a derogatory way, like, culture is supposed to be shared and enjoyed and cherished. It's not, I can wear a dress from a different culture, and as long as I'm doing it respectfully, completely fine. Please wear a sari, wear a kurta. Like, I would love to show you Indian dresses and like how to dress, and as long as you're not making fun of it, I would love that. And it's people on the internet go, you can't culturally appropriate, and it's like, why not? It's supposed to be shared.
Exactly.
I think it's also the difference between like just sort of cheaply lifting the aesthetic versus like
Sure.
actually understanding or like engaging with the culture.
You have to do it do it respectfully.
Yeah,
not-
respectfully.
There's also a difference between an individual doing a thing and an institution doing a thing. You know,
yeah.
like when they did the whole oh god, coming for you now, House of Representatives. When they did the whole kneeling in the Capitol with the kente cloth on them, it was just like, what's happening here? What are you doing? What's going on? And that was an institution, that was an organization doing it. Now, if somebody just happened to see Nancy Pelosi or somebody walking down the street and she was wearing some red, black, and green, or she was wearing like some kente cloth, like, oh, I see you, Nancy. That's a good look on you. That's real nice. It's a difference between an individual versus a institution. I mean, even in college as well. I gave several white people dreadlocks. I used to have dreadlocks myself, and I did it for others. And now I hear people talk about this, like, oh, you can't have dreadlocks. That's cultural appropriation. It's like, if you like how it looks, then why not do it? Like, am I culturally appropriating like the Spartacus look or like ancient Rome and Greece because I have a shaved head? No, it's just
Appropriating bald guy look.
Well, like speaking of like the institutions, it's a lot of companies do that where they have the diversity photo shoot, where it's like one employee from every culture is in there.
Wait, are you making judgments here?
But that's the picture on their website. You go on and it's like, we are a diverse group of people. But when you go into their board meeting or their like senior leadership meeting, it's all a bunch of white dudes, and you're really lying to the public for your checkbox for diversity, and you're not actually empowering and taking other people's opinions and different perspectives while you're creating your product.
that's almost worse.
Yeah.
It's just like acknowledging that there's a problem, pretending like you're doing something for to counteract the problem, but then double downing on your own.
Sure.
I stopped myself from cussing. Crappy behavior.
You're fine. It's all good. So kind of along those lines then, we've seen a lot of institutions do it poorly, but like say you're trying to make a game, is there any way or any advice for how to not come off as appropriating, but rather celebrating and sharing when you're like writing or creating, say?
I think from a writing point of view, I think you don't hammer the audience with it. Don't be, this is this gay guy, he's very gay, he's doing gay things. That's fun for gay things, that's great. I think if you can make it organic, and again, that happens a lot by interacting with people who really know how the stuff works. And again, not hitting the big hammer of pointing at someone and say, look, we have an Indian character, and he's selling ice cream. You know, I mean, you don't have to do that. And I think if you do it, it's stupid. So it's in a lot of ways better to just put it out there without the big spotlight.
I 100% agree. Like, diversity is not something that defines us. It is part of us. Like, I am Indian, but like, that's not my definition of like, that is me as a person. It has shaped my life, obviously, but don't just be like, Indian guy making games. And it's like, well, that's just my background. And making that, it be not about my background, but be about the character. Can, like, basically what you're saying. Anyone?
I think institutions and game development specifically can get better about trying to do these things and trying to move away from faux diversity and representing well by being more relaxed with it, along similar to what Paul was saying, not just trying to hammer on it, put it in the face over and over and over again, but also acknowledging the commonalities between all people. Like, I don't wake up every morning thinking I'm black, I'm black, I'm black, I'm black, I'm black, I'm black, I'm black. I don't think that. Nobody thinks that. A white person doesn't think, oh, I'm white, I'm white, I'm white. It doesn't. That doesn't translate. The things that we have in common are way more in quantity than the things that make us different. So I think a good character that you can look to in media that has done this is the Miles Morales character from like the Spider-Man stuff. Miles Morales is a normal dude. He has normal family issues. He has a normal environment. And every now and then there's a little flourish of the culture in the background. But it's just something that adds spice to the character. It's not the definition of the character.
For those who under a rock, who's Miles Morales?
Miles Morales is Spider-Man!
You're just Spider-Man.
Wow. He's the
I know
Spider-Man.
what we're doing after this stream is over.
Right?
Watching Spider-Verse.
But yeah, like he's not like you don't. I don't think about Miles Morales versus Peter Parker. It's just like, oh, Peter Parker's the white Spider-Man. Miles Morales is the black Hispanic Spider-Man. No, it's like no, it's just they're just different Spider-Mans, and one is slightly different than the other personality-wise. It's the racial component is almost just an afterthought.
So if you said Doctor Who, I'd be with you.
Again, it like goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's not to like force it in your face of like here's the cultural guy who's the side character versus like another person who is not the generic person. He might be slightly different, but they are still they have a lot of commonalities with you, and like celebrating differences and sharing the similarities and not the he's different. Look at him.
Doctor Who did this pretty good as well. Actually, was it the 11th Doctor? I think which was the one that was played by a woman for the first time.
Was she the 13th?
Or she's the 13th. Sorry, I'm not like big on Doctor Who.
I think she's 14. Yeah.
But yeah, it was like it was mentioned, and like it's usually the asshole characters who were just like the Doctor's a man and stuff like that. But it's like it's really she's just like all of the other Doctors, maybe a little bit more Doctor Who than some of the other Doctors.
Right, but it still blew up people's brains. On the internet, there was much wailing and gnashing of teeth. And I think you're always going to see that.
Yeah,
Let's go.
Oh, yeah.
well, there's the James Bond one.
James Bond,
James Bond, you can't make Idris Elba James Bond.
That's true. Yep.
Like, why not?
Or Heimdall, apparently.
was. But I mean, it is something that has to be acknowledged that if you do any of the stuff that we say we all should do, there will be a lot of troglodytes who will be pissed off at you, and you will hear about it, particularly if you ever go on like the Twitters or any of those other things. They will be extremely outraged. And I mean, screw them. I don't care, but you have to be prepared for it.
Well, it's also like celebrating differences in cultures. Like we have historical games and we can show here's some things culturally significant that happened and like talk about its importance versus we're doing this Diwali festival celebration. We're gonna dress and do the thing. It's versus like talking about the why is this important to a set of people and getting behind why that's important, why it's culturally significant, and talking about and showing and celebrating differences is how you make a difference in the way you portray diversity versus here's the rainbow people.
Paul hit on something that I do want to like address a little bit more. Just the pushback that you get when you start to go into some of these stories and how you deal with it. I think the first thing that you got to realize is that like that pushback is not coming from a position of good faith. These are bad faith actors. These are people who are trying to serve a certain agenda, or they're people who have been manipulated by people who are trying to serve a certain agenda. And I'm not even going to get into what all that is, but it's bad. It's not something that is conducive to a society. It's not something that is conducive to a culture that is trying to stay together and not go into Mad Max world.
Well, you also
some people just they just want to see the world burn. You got to take account of that, but like you can't cater to it. Like why cater to the lowest common denominator all the time, especially when there is so much history of that having already been done. Like those stories already exist and they have been around for hundreds of years at this point. Let's do something new. And if somebody wants to whine and cry about it, it's just like, okay, cool. Do you not have the ability to look at a different story? Do you not have the ability to read something different, watch something different?
Ban the books!
Like, why are we burning books now? Come on.
Potter banned high school still. Well, it also goes into how social media works and how things get trending.
Negative engagement is
five
way
to
more
10
popular.
people will be upset. You can't make everyone happy. That's like, it's an impossible goal to have, to make everyone be on the same page and be happy. And 10 people get upset, then there's an article about it, and then other people start making fun of it. But now the hashtag has thousands of likes and it's trending. But most of the conversation is just people making fun of the people who are getting upset. But no one who's not involved in that gets that. And
Well, the algorithm spins it up. And
exactly.
It's off.
Yeah, and it's part of the whole economy of the thing. Like, you can't please all of the people all of the time, but we exist in an economic situation of, we believe in infinite expansion of profits, and that's not realistic. That just doesn't happen. That we don't apply that kind of thought to any other kind of human-made system except for economy. We want more. It's like, you know what? You're not going to get all the people in the world. Everybody's not going to agree with what you say. Some people are going to be pissed off at you. Some people are going to think that you are the worst person in the world. And you know what? As long as you can look in the mirror and say, I'm not a bad guy, I did a good thing, then why do you care about them? Money can't be the only motive for doing a thing. The motive for it cannot be. It is a made up finite thing, but that can't be the only reason to engage in diversity. Diversity needs to be engaged simply of its own volition, of its own accord. I like to think of society as a wave pool in a water park. All right?
Diseased?
Now, when you are in that wave pool, even if you're not the one peeing all over the place, you are still in contact with somebody else's waste.
I don't like this analogy.
That is society. I don't like how this society works sometimes either. But you know what? You take a shower after you get out of the wave pool. You don't just let all that filth wash over you and then just, rub your eyes.
Well,
I think like you do something about it, and you don't contribute to it. You don't also pee in the wave pool. That just makes it all worse.
This is a t-shirt waiting back in the tree.
More t-shirts today!
well, to please the corporate people, and like you mentioned, another reason for making your game diverse is you get more money because more people will be able to play it. So they are not only just monetary benefits, but also you learn more. You like broaden your horizon.
Yeah, I don't think enough people actually are going to be pissed off that the main character is black to really dent your profits that much.
Yeah,
Really not.
Black Panther.
Oh,
Night of the Living Dead. Night of the Living Dead.
That's a great movie.
Star the black guy. It is the most popular, most gone back to zombie film in history. And that was, I don't even want to talk about the meaning, but it had a black character and he got shot in the head at the end by some really angry white cops. Like,
That's a great movie, though.
that did not hurt its popularity at all.
But then we had The Little Mermaid. And losing
Had Lightyear.
their collective shit over that, which is obviously ridiculous. I'm not a big fan of Disney live-action films, and I want to see it because of that. It's not that I won't see it because it's a black mermaid. She's a mermaid. What? There's no problem with that.
Yeah, like it's a fictional thing.
Dude,
Who knew fish were racist?
I'm telling you.
No idea. So we've talked a lot about ways to do it wrong and how it's done wrong.
Don't be a fool.
Don't pee in the pool, people. Let's say you made a mistake. You made an honest-to-God accidental mistake. You're trying your best. Like maybe you co-opted a community's language by accident and you didn't know. What do you do? What can you do to either make reparations or apologize? What's the best way going forward? So I'm assuming ignoring it is probably not the best way.
Yeah, ignoring it is definitely not good. I think that a lot of these situations can be resolved by just authenticity. If you step, I'm sorry to continue this trend of
No,
but if you step in some poo, your concern should not be, oh no, everybody's going to see that I stepped in some poo. I got to do something about that. No, your concern should be, I got to get this poo off of my shoe. That is what your concern is. So if you do something that is offensive or whatever, then just genuinely apologize and try to make it better. You hit the hammer on the head, or hit the nail on the head. Yeah. With just the apology and, if necessary, reparation. And reparations, that's a buzzword to some people. Don't think that it means something that it's not. But it's just like, hey, if you took something from somebody, give it back to them. That's reparations.
Well, I would say, first of all, I hope that pool was not in the
wave pool?
Most likely not.
Yeah.
Right outside of it.
Not going back to work real soon. But also, the good thing about this medium is that you can fix things. A lot of times, everything's downloadable. You can, if you've done something bad, you can make a patch that covers it, that ends it. And I think you can do that along with whatever way you feel like apologizing to the people you've insulted, which could easily be through, the internets, whatever your normal channels of communication with your audience is. You can actually say, we screwed up on this, we're fixing it, and we're sorry to anybody we offended. Mm-hmm. And then just go on about your life.
Yep. As long as it's genuine, authentic, comes from a good place, then if somebody doesn't buy that, then they're being the jerk at that point. Like, that's what I was taught when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. If somebody does something to me and apologizes to me, and I don't, and I'm not just like, okay, I'm still kind of mad, but okay, you apologize, then I'm the jerk at that point.
Well, it goes back to being authentic, and humans are not perfect, and people make mistakes. None of us are the same people we were 10 years ago, and it's about showing growth and learning. And I might have offended people 10 years ago, but now I have learned, and as long as I can
do 10 years ago,
I will tell it after lots of things. But
a Bollywood song or something.
Yep. But it's about learning and growing and making sure that you are being authentic and sincere when you are apologizing. And it's the way we have the cancel culture doesn't really promote that. It's very much, you did something 10 years ago, now you're fired. And it's like, I didn't even work there then. And will that make me learn my lesson? Not really. It's just going to make me sit at my home without a job, just being angry, and then blaming people, because of course it's not my fault, because that's really how people will feel when you're put in a place where you feel like you're unjustly being picked on. So it's promoting that people can make mistakes and it's okay, and as long as you're sincere about it, you can learn and grow. But on the other side, there are a lot of the corporate apologies where they're just making sure, please don't sue us, and that's also wrong. And that should be called out and not be well, my profits are hurting, so we're sorry.
Right.
I think maybe. Oh, were you?
Go ahead.
Well, so I think another aspect to look at this is in the personal, in the day-to-day, in the office, not just on the Twitter for your company.
I like how it's the Twitter.
I don't know, phrases, they're contagious, If one person says it, everyone's gonna say it. But yeah, and I think there's there's sort of a fine line between genuine apology and empathy and wanting to listen, and sort of putting a lot of emotional labor on the other person. Because I think that on a good day, if we were to just have a genuine conversation, and you were it came up and you asked a respectful question about my life and experiences and whatnot, sure, I'd answer it. But you also have to consider that maybe some of that responsibility should go on you. To do the research and to broaden your own perspectives, and it's kind of a tough balancing act to follow. And if you do make a mistake, again, I think it's tough between genuine apology and dwelling on it and kind of doing this self-deprecating, I'm so sorry, I can't believe I did this. Especially a lot of people kind of want to move on. I think the important part is to show this is a genuine mistake, and I'm sorry I made this mistake, because I know how it affects you. Versus oh, I used the wrong pronoun, I'm so sorry. and then you continue like, oh, I should have known, or even worse, like trying to come up with like an explanation, like no, like
Don't
just like you're making it worse right now. And I think that like on the macro level, like the company level, I'm pretty sure, like I can't think of any specific examples. I'm pretty sure a company like PR person could also make like that prolonging mistake. So I'd be careful to like respond correctly and like proportionately to what's going on. Once you're genuine and put that out there, like that's probably the most you need to do.
Yeah. People aren't teacups. Like, we don't shatter into pieces from every single tiny little offense. Like, unless you just ran up to me and was like, hey, N-bomb, then I'm probably not going to, like, punch you in the face.
You can't recover from that.
Yeah, you can't recover from that, probably.
So kind of along the lines of just speaking about sincerity and corporate messaging, what's everyone's feels about those blurbs at the start of some of the games being like, this was made by a diverse group of individuals, and you know what I'm talking about.
Very cool.
The fact that it needs to be, well,
Very cool, because you don't need to show that.
Wow,
it needs to be said is indicated that it's just like you're coming from a place of that not being the norm.
Yeah.
Of that not being routine.
Well,
it's like, hey, most of our games are made by all one type of person, but this game right here, we had like 3 whole people of color on it. Like,
well, they're saying pat us on the back.
Yeah,
Look at us.
yeah.
We are diverse. We're doing a good thing, and it's like, no, this is normal. Like, you don't get like kudos for doing the bare minimum.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just, not to be contrarian.
Oh, please do.
But I don't want to be. I just want to make stuff up. In this business, there are lots and lots and lots of companies that are not diverse or zero diverse. And in some ways you would say pointing out that you are diverse, even if it's in a stupid blurb, is at least saying, trying to make it more common to expect that. And that doesn't mean it can't be done in a stupidly offensive way. Or embarrassing way, or whatever you want to say about it. But I mean, it's again, this is the business that gave us like Gamergate, and which we'll not talk about too much, except just to point out
they'll show up if you say it.
Exactly 3 times. You say it 3
Don't
times.
summon them.
I mean, in some ways, that was humiliating for everybody who works in the game business. Totally humiliating and infuriating. And what is the proper way to say we're not like that? How do we get that across, or do we? I mean, I don't know, but
I think it's letting it show through the storytelling.
Yeah. Well, again,
letting it show through the people that you send out to the press meetings, or to the expos, or to the panels that you are doing for game development conferences.
it goes into the show don't tell.
Yeah.
Like,
Show don't tell, and I think those blurbs come across as just telling.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, if you want to show us, like, what does your social media page look like? Are you showing, like, are you featuring your employees? Are you featuring the members of your studio? What about on your website? Do you show that? I think there are certainly ways, like, we just have a team page and just has everybody. Like, you can see for yourself and give us your own diversity rating, but like to just say that, I want to see it in some way.
If a company wants to specifically address the problems of a lack of diversity, then there are lots of organizations out there that are trying to do things that are pro-diversity. Like, there are trans groups, there are groups of people of color, there are cultural groups. There's all kinds of groups that you could make it obvious and make it public that you are contributing to this group, that you are trying to help this group, that you are consulting with this group. And those things demonstrate an actual tangible attempt to make a change, rather than just, hey, stick that blurb on the front of our game and let's move on.
And again, it goes to the point of either doing it for PR or to say that we're changing, we're trying to make a change, because it comes off as we are doing this for PR. It's just a blurb.
I mean, most corporations are evil, really. Think about it. And you can sort of take what you can get. I mean, I agree with everything you're saying, but I mean, really, particularly they have stockholders.
Sure.
It's really a struggle to make people want to do that if it's going to cut a nickel off the profit.
That's true. We don't know. Maybe some producer or high-level designer said, "No, I don't want this blurb," and then like someone who owns more shares in the company said, "Oh no, we're putting this in because it's going to make us more money." It's 3% more diverse this way.
And I mean, and this is where a lot of the whole here's a buzzword on the internet right now. This is where a lot of the intersectional action comes in, because you can't fully fix and address the problems of transphobia, of misogyny, of racism, of cultural appropriation. You can't fix those within a framework of corporations. Like, it's the corporate model does not exist to do anything of social value beyond produce wealth, beyond getting money. Now, the fact that we employ these models to do things that we love, like create video games or create cool shows or write books or, do all these other pieces of media, that is secondary to what, at least I believe and what I have learned, is a corporation's existence, which is just to make money. So if you are really interested in diversity, then you have to start looking outside of this model that we have been presented and have been living under for the past few hundred years and have accepted as thinking is, that's just the way the world is. That's just the way things always are. I would love to see things move back more toward, I'm not even talking about some utopia idea. The guild system of like the Renaissance era, to me, was, at least what I've read about it, what I've learned about it, was way preferable to what we have right now, at least on a smaller scale, because you had actual artisans and you had people who were actually into the craft or into whatever their guild was about, who were producing stuff. They weren't just producing it for money. A lot of times they were producing it for their patrons, sure, but they did these things because they love these things. And that's why a lot of us are doing these things today. We just happen to have all been put inside this corporate model that we cannot break out of. And it doesn't have to be that way. We can engage in cooperative economics. We can engage in a lot of different kinds of organization. But that's if you're dedicated to trying to look for the intersectional ways diversity has ramifications. Because, like I said, it's not going to be fixed within a purely for-profit institution. So what you were saying, Paul, is like, I 100% agree with you. And I guess in some instances, saying something to try to pretend you're being good is better than nothing, I suppose.
Oops.
So you had mentioned we actually mentioned a couple times about it's really then it comes down to people, the people in the organization trying to do the best, being sincere, being authentic. How do you then hire up for this? Because like a lot of people we want to be more diverse. Let's hire diversely. I've
never hired anyone in my life.
I have, and in fact, for this company, I've been digging through several hundred.
Not exaggerating.
Some narrative designer type of.
We're hiring more.
Yeah, exactly.
My God.
Make him dig more.
Yes, I need the help. But and it's something that I think mainly because I've been in this company, which does make a really strong effort to be diverse. It's really sort of brought it to my attention as I've been reading through all of these resumes. And the first thing I have to look for is quality of the candidate, and just in terms of the basic ability to write good. And so that's what I'm reading for first. And then also the history of where they have been employed, what they have done, are they professional or not? Mainly because that's the position I've been asked to fill. But diversity is, it's in my brain, and I think about it when I'm looking at these resumes, and it will sort of make a good story, a good background will push people higher up the list. And it simply will, because I know it is one of the things that this company is actively trying to get. And so, well, again, the first thing I want to see is that someone knows where punctuation goes, and those kind of things. But if you use that punctuation to tell a little story about yourself, and that, includes details to help me understand your background, diversity is definitely a plus for me. And I think it's a plus for this company, which still is largely white guys.
We have a large number of bald white men in general.
Exactly. And But it is something that my instructions from my boss over there are to help push out, to help make the company more diverse. And I think the game design department is pretty darn diverse now anyway. But that is definitely a plus. And it's not like, sort of it doesn't win someone a job, but it may win them a callback. And then that's from there that then other things go into it.
I think an important thing is to reach out to local organizations that you know are interacting with people in a way that's not necessarily for what is the they're not the default Danny non-diverse option. So, for example, in Baltimore there is a program called Code in the Schools. Code in the Schools works with a lot of people of color, because I mean, surprise, Baltimore is a lot of people of color. So, like reaching out to groups like that, even reaching out to other groups that may be more established and may have more name recognition. Everybody knows what the NAACP is. I'm pretty sure the NAACP has a chapter in every major city in the United States. And I'm almost certain the NAACP, actually not almost, I am certain the NAACP has an online presence. They have people who work in tech. They have people who engage in this kind of activity, and they have programs where there are people who are trying to get into the game industry. And I just name dropped one organization. That is one out of like a huge ocean of organizations that there are, at least in the United States itself. I can't speak for other countries, but I mean, you have to reach out to places that are beyond where you were reached. For example, so if you were recruited from a college campus, don't go to college campuses. At least not one that's like the one you came from. Go to an HBCU.
It's okay.
I'm sorry. Go to an HBCU. Go to a community college. There's a lot of great people at community colleges who just don't have the money to go to some of the more prestigious institutions. And that is one of the, at least not just color barriers, but like all kinds of social grouping barriers that you will find between private institutions that are for scholastic education versus community ones. And a lot of those people in community colleges, they will end up, working jobs that do not fully suit all the things that they learned. But they could if somebody would just reach out to them. And it's not that they're lower quality. It's not that they aren't able to do things as well. It's just money. If we can, and this is one of the problems I said with the whole intersectionality and diversity being within the framework of capitalism, if we can try to look past the barriers that separate people because of money, I think that would make diverse hiring a lot easier. So if whatever place you're going to requires a good degree of money in order for a person to get their profile on that platform or in that organization or at that college, look to the cheap place. Look to the place where people who are poorer can engage in, because that is where you will find like the majority of the American population is not as privileged, is not as moneyed.
1%?
They're not. Like even like just us sitting here in this room, even we are privileged more than most people in the United States. So we have to find a way to reach outside of our comfort zones and into the zones of the majority.
Yep, it goes like you said, go out of your bubble and
Make an effort.
make an effort to learn something new, move out of your small town, and learn from different perspectives, different backgrounds. It's like goes into the education of knowing that this person is from a lesser fortunate area. That means they've had to do a lot more work and put a lot of effort into getting to the same point someone else from a Ivy League degree gets to.
Shade at me. Okay.
And well, it's someone has put a lot of effort into getting there from a place that were a lot lower than someone who's more privileged, and being able to identify that when you're doing resume reviews or doing interviews, because that just goes to show that they are more hardworking and will be able to like deal with adversity better, and just making sure that you are giving people opportunities who won't have gotten opportunities otherwise.
Yeah, it's a bit. You're not doing charity. It's not like you're being like, oh, I'm a great person because I, reach down to the small folk. No, no. You're just being a normalized person who is taking account of the situation and the world that we are in by doing so. Because, I mean, if you're not making that effort, if you're not trying to do that diverse hiring, then you're just contributing to a problem. And, I mean, whether you're doing it intentionally or not, you're in that pool and you getting that pee on you and you're not washing it off.
And on that note, it's the pee pool.
Okay.
We got a few minutes left, so we want to kick it back to Andrew if there are any questions from the audience.
Yeah, audience is loving it. Nobody's going swimming anytime soon, thankfully. But
I've single-handedly dismantled him.
yeah, we're also not going to play your wave pool sim that you're developing.
Yeah.
But Emily
Change all those.
Turner, we don't know who she is, asks,
Hi, Emily.
Hi, Emily.
support those with invisible disabilities.
Wow, so I was actually just about to mention that at the with your comment of what did you say? Well, just the general theme of being cognizant of people's backgrounds and like where they're coming from. And I think that like a lot of like the traditional interview process, the traditional application process, it's very, very difficult for folks who might be neurodiverse or have some sort of mental illness. But they could also be really amazing talent that you want to hire. And I think that, interestingly enough, I think that like neurodiversity or just even like other like medical things you might not see. It's one of those things that like I feel like we don't talk about as much in the mainstream. I think there's almost this assumption that if somebody is, you don't know how hard somebody like had to work to like make a resume. That might have been like really challenging for them and them specifically. Or maybe in the interview, they're not making eye contact with you. Well, does that mean they're not professional?
I'd like to bring that up. I've actually had to stop debriefs of candidates when people started to bring that kind of stuff and be like, I'm sorry, that is not a disqualifying feature. Some people cannot make eye contact. I'm staring at all your noses and mouths right now. Like eyeballs.
Like looking into people's eyes for some people is genuinely like painful, basically. So are you gonna, you kind of have to understand what's going on with them.
Sure, but it's also illegal to ask.
That's
If you're doing the interview,
What's wrong with you?
You can't say it's wrong, though.
I mean, it is. You really, there are some legal requirements, and thank God they're there. And they may make it difficult for some people, but it also means that I can't check your health records before I hire you. Just not allowed.
Yeah, so I think the solution then is more to just be considerate of those sorts of things. Not ask, but really look for what you are looking for in the interview, and not, oh well, they didn't look in my eyes. They're not gonna. They don't belong around here, or we're staring at a computer all day anyway.
Oh yeah, I think acknowledging that it is a challenge is a big first step. Like, at least have it in your mind, use it as part of your mental calculus. But also, just like it's sort of what you were saying earlier. Like, just don't let things that you just don't like or just get on your nerves make the decision about whether or not somebody is going to get a job. Make the decision about whether or not somebody is going to get a job being, do they meet the qualifications of the position? Do they demonstrate the ability to do the job? Do they demonstrate the ability to go above and beyond while doing the job? I mean, like, if somebody is just like looking around or fidgeting or scratching or whatever, it's just like, okay, there's a difference between annoyance and between, oh, these are these little things I don't like, versus somebody's actual ability. So, I mean, it's kind of weird. You got to put yourself kind of in like a robot mode where you're just not acknowledging these things. And because what Paul was saying is also true. It's like, you can't ask, you can't put somebody on the spot. You can't say what's wrong with you, because it's not something that's wrong. It's just something that's different than you. That's all it is. So like, I know I have a bazillion little tics that I have been screaming at myself trying not to do while I'm on the stream right now. But like, not everybody is able to do that. Not everybody will have that kind of discipline, and that doesn't make them a bad person. That just makes them a human being. And if you think like somebody not looking you in the eyes is a weird thing, go look in the eyes of a lion and see what happens. This is a normal thing in the animal kingdom. We're just animals. Not everybody likes to be looked directly in the eyes.
Go to your local zoo.
All right. Well, we're at 1 o'clock, and we'll actually give Puzzles by Joe the last word, talking about his clutter games, because more diverse objects make the game more interesting. Which I think can apply to a lot of different things. And we'll ignore his comment that sincerity, if you can fake it, you've got it made. But with that, Oxide, incredible presentation, great insights. Very much looking forward to Ara, the Untold History. And everybody else, stay tuned for Ben Sandfelder's class on classes. Thank you very much, Oxide.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.